Bring your attention now to your heart space. Feel your heart go deeper. Right here, right now. Right where you are. Go deep into the tenderness and the gentleness and the kindness in your heart. Just like the steady sound of your breath and the constant beat of your heart, life is moving through you. You are alive and in motion with the universal rhythm. Nothing is stationary. Life is like a river in constant motion. Change sometimes happens gently like a ripple, and at other times you may be navigating a waterfall. Change is inevitable, yet we can learn to soften our resistance. Through the power of God within, we have the infinite ability to adapt to the changes in our lives, to go with and flow easily. We can allow God to express through us. I invite you to take these words into the quiet and the stillness. I move through change with ease and grace. I move through change with ease and grace. Ease and grace. Just keeping in that same heart space and returning into this physical place, we come to the realization that at the center of our being, no matter what the storm, whether it be a ripple or a waterfall, that the center of our being is divine peace, power, light, and beauty. We celebrate in joyful appreciation. Our blessings are so bountiful. We are so very blessed.
We can be kind. We can take care of each other. We can remember that deep down inside we all need the same thing. And maybe we'll find, if we are there for each other, that together we'll weather whatever tomorrow may bring. Nobody really wants to fight. Nobody really wants to go to war. Everyone wants to make things right. So what are we always fighting for? Does nobody want to see it? Does nobody understand? The power to heal is right here in our hand. We can be kind. We can take care of each other. We can remember that deep down inside we all need the same thing.
such an honor to be here with you. I am your Great Lakes Unity Regional Consultant. I work both for Unity Worldwide Ministries and your Great Lakes Unity Region, of which you are a part. And I bring you greetings from your president, Reverend Donna Johnson at UWM and her staff, and also from your regional board and Ron Fritz, who is our president there. And it is always so great to be around Unity people and meet you and talk with you. And we thank you, all of us. And Donna and Ron both specifically said to send their greetings to you and their blessings to you as you go through this transition. We thank you for your consciousness and your contribution to changing the consciousness on this planet. It is indeed valuable and important, and we appreciate your support of both the region and the national movement. So I took the opportunity this week to listen to the talk that you heard by my wonderful friend and colleague, Reverend Judy Grimes. What a great talk that was. Yeah, just a great talk. And it is an honor for me to be here to be able to introduce to you this new series, Eye of the Storm. Now, I'm aware of the fact that very often when you start a fall study group, you're able to have the author of the book here. I'm so sorry, I'm not the author of this book. I wish I were. But I have studied it for nearly 20 years, teaching it in my last church at least 13 times. I also know Gary Simmons personally, have worked with him a great many times, and so if you want to touch me after the service, you can do that. And I taught it not just because it was one of the 5 classes that is required if you were going to become a member of the church in Kalamazoo, Michigan, but because every time I read this book, I'm brought to a new and deeper level of understanding of who I am and how my personality so often interferes with who I want to be as spirit expressing on this planet. It's a wonderful book. That's the test of a really good book, isn't it? And you may have heard Jim say that you can still sign up for a small group. And if they've run out of spaces, go ahead and write down your name and your contact information so they can get in touch with you. They can still possibly put together another group or 2 or put you into a group. So be sure and sign up after the service. I do want to acknowledge Reverend Barbara and you for being in the forefront of what it takes to make a church thrive in this 21st century environment. And I'll tell you, it is small groups. They are absolutely essential. And why is that? We come to church for many, many reasons. Sometimes we are pushed, as I was, by our pain when I first came to Unity. Sometimes we are pulled by our, what we call divine discontent. And I know that some of us come mostly for social reasons. And I know that some people come out of habit. It's okay. But why is it? Yeah, right. If you came because you saw this billboard, then you know you're safe. In all cases, I believe that even the shyest, most standoffish person comes because we are longing for human contact. What we all long for is other people who we like and who we want to like us, who we believe like us. People that we can share with, that we can learn to trust, that we can build relationship with, and be the kind of friend that Reverend Judy talked to you about last week. Now, I know in this age of electronic communication, we may sometimes think that we can be like this guy. Read that? Mm-hmm. Even my human contact I put on the internet, except there he is talking to a person. Mm-hmm. And as wonderful and as essential as electronic communication is in this day and age, internet communication, it is not ultimately satisfying. I need at least sometimes to see a face react before me, to hear immediate response to my news, to witness my grief or my disappointment or my sadness or my joy, and more fully share in it, to know that I'm not alone on this path. I believe what we are looking for in one another is God with skin on. We all long for connection to others, and small groups provide the very best opportunity for that to occur. And it's wonderful that you've chosen this excellent book this fall as you're going through this transition. Because transition will most probably bring up all of the unfinished personal, emotional business that we all have in our personal lives. Now, I'm going to talk to you about some things today which may not be terribly comfortable. And I'm in the capacity today somewhat of, rather than comforting the afflicted, of afflicting the comfortable. But there are some things I think that would benefit you to know. Because you see, transition gives rise to anxiety. And in anxiety, we're all able to jump to the worst conclusion at one single bound. Because you see, the unfinished business in us remains unconscious. If we were conscious of it, we'd probably do something about it, but we're unconscious. And we human beings tend to project that unfinished business anywhere else but on the person that we see in the mirror. Very often, the minister, the one who is leaving and or the one who is coming, can be recipients of that projection, and board members and search committees in that transition can be recipients of that projection and that anxiety as well. Those of you who were here and remember the transition when Reverend Stan and Barbara first came know that there was a lot of chaos and conflict. And it took many months to work through it, maybe close to two years. But you have thrived since then. And things are mostly very harmonious right now. It's the sweetest atmosphere walking in here today. I've enjoyed it tremendously. But believe me, chaos occurs at some level in every ministerial transition. And even in a situation like this one, where beloved minister is simply going through the normal stages of retiring after a long, successful ministry with leaving the church in good shape, there will be some chaos. I'm your regional consultant. I'm here to educate you and tell you some of these things. It's part of my job. We know from evidence-based studies, that all the feelings that are present anytime a human relationship is severed are present in this congregation. All the feelings that are present anytime a human relationship is severed are present in this congregation. Feelings of abandonment, of betrayal, of grief, of hurt, of anger, of jealousy, sometimes even relief. All are present in any congregation going through a ministerial transition, including this one. Now, some of you may not know right now really how you feel because you still have Reverend Barbara with you. And as long as they're with you, so a lot of us tend not to begin to make the change. So studying this book will assist you in being more aware if and when these feelings begin to arise in you. And the more aware we are, the more prepared we are to notice that there are feelings and be able to claim them as our own and then appropriately deal with them. To have compassion for yourself, first of all, and then have compassion for others. And then rather projecting our feelings and blaming others, we claim them for ourselves. In one of his final books, our co-founder, Charles Fillmore, wrote in Dynamics for Living, unless you become, that enlightenment is of little value unless you continue to become spiritually and emotionally mature. That is our most important work. So the beauty of this book, in this time, in this place, is that it awakens us to the areas of our unconscious being and where we need to grow up and want to grow up. It awakens us to those things that we tend to hold on to and tend to project on others. This book will be practiced for living a healthy transition, so that the new ministry partnership that you form eventually will have the best chance of forming a positive trajectory right away. And of course, your personal relationships will benefit too, I promise you that. So, you've seen the title of this talk. I'm looking around, there are a lot of empty chairs, and I'm wondering if the talk title didn't put some people off, because I'll tell you what, I know almost nobody who wants to sign up for a workshop titled Conflict 101. Really, it doesn't sound like much fun, does it? I would like for you to bring to mind a disagreement that you may have had with somebody recently. It could be fairly minor disagreement, but it's kind of niggling, you're not quite sure what it means. Or it could be a conflict that's very recent and very real to you right now. It could be fairly serious. Just bring that conflict to mind. And now I want you to close your eyes. And I'd like for everybody, just out of respect for everyone, to close your eyes. And I want you to visualize that person's face. Breathe. Now let your attention be on what is happening inside your body. What do you notice? Go ahead and talk to me. What are you noticing? Tight in your chest. Tight in your chest. What else? Pardon?
Tightening your throat.
Tightening of your throat. Yeah, that's very common. That's a good clue for us. What else?
Headache behind the eyes.
Pardon?
Headache.
Headache behind your eyes, or your eyes watering. Those are, yes, absolutely. Those are. How, jaws clenching? Some of the buttocks tight. Yeah. Neck and shoulders tighten up.
Swirls in the stomach.
Yes, knotted stomach. Absolutely.
Pounding heart.
Pounding heart. All right, take a deep breath and open your eyes. Now, if that's what happens, why do we want to embrace conflict? Because conflict is. Are you willing to accept that conflict is neither good nor bad, it just is? Now, you're going through a very significant change in your church. And change itself is one of the primary causes of conflict. One thing I know, when you put two or more people in the same room or apartment or house or workplace or airplane or church volunteer team or whatever, you will have disagreements, right? Right? Yes. And while disagreements can be a very low level of conflict that might be easily resolved, it is conflict nonetheless. And I notice in Unity that we tend to be a little averse to admitting that we have conflicts. One of my professors at Unity Institute used to tell stories that Charles Fillmore, our co-founder, would have lunch every day in the cafeteria with the same employee. And they would yell at one another and fight and play devil's advocate with one another as they wrote and developed the ideas that they were thinking about and writing about. And new people would come to Unity Village very wide-eyed and very excited in this wonderful, peaceful prayer place. And they would see that and they would get very alarmed. They couldn't imagine how Charles Fillmore could behave that way. I do know that a lot of us are very uncomfortable in the presence of conflict. Some people are raised in an environment where anytime someone got angry, someone got hurt. Sometimes physically, sometimes through cruel or demeaning or shaming remarks. I know that others of us may have been raised in environments where arguing and disagreement were just never heard. It wasn't allowed. You always had to pretend that everything was just fine. I'm fine, thank you. In both cases, when these people encounter the kind of passion and intensity in robust argument and exchange, they sometimes feel very ill-prepared at least, if not even perhaps feel that their physical safety is threatened. Now in Unity we believe in peace and harmony. We talk about it all the time. This is a picture of one of the beautiful northern porticos at Unity Village. But I tell you, I think that we tend to misidentify what peace and harmony means. We pray for peace. But peace is not the absence of chaos or upset in our environment. Peace is the awareness of our inseparable connection with Spirit, regardless of what is going on around us. We rest in the silence. But the silence is not the absence of sound. The silence is the awareness of presence of God in and through us. Peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the awareness of our inseparable connection with Spirit. Now we need to know that because conflict is. It's neither good nor bad. It just is. So affirm that with me. Will you together? Conflict is neither good nor bad. It just is. It cannot be avoided. It can be suppressed for a bit, but left unresolved, it will leak out, usually in sometimes harmful ways. If we do anything, live with people, socialize, go to a workplace, shop, use a parking lot. Ever had any conflict in a parking lot? Volunteer at church? Conflict occurs, period. Now, we used to talk about conflict management, but we don't do that anymore. You know why? Because we discovered that you cannot manage conflict. The only thing we can do is manage ourselves in the midst of the conflict. That's all we can do. And when disagreements cannot be settled in a mutually satisfying way, then the conflict gets exacerbated. So when we first realize that we have disagreements that are not getting resolved, the question to ask is, what is present in me? What must be present in me for this conflict to live? What must be absent in me for this conflict to live? What is present in me? Is it the habit of people-pleasing? Is it fear of rejection? Is it fear of being in a fight, of getting hurt? Is it fear of guilt or shame or defensiveness or wanting to run away? What is registering in my body? And where do my thoughts go immediately? What stories do I make up about the situation and the other person and myself? And what is absent? Am I aware of being loved and loving? Do I observe a lack of self-love and self-worth? Am I noticing a sense of not enough? Do I mentally want to put up my dukes? Do I want to hide in a closet or just get too busy to notice? Is my tendency to fight, to run away, or do I get paralyzed? Conflict is neither good or bad. It is our thinking that makes it so. Disagreements are a normal part of two or more negotiating some aspect of life together. And even when the disagreement expands into conflict, it is not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes it is the evidence of aliveness and activity and growth, something calling us to a higher space of being. And so often, the conflict is not at all what it seems to be about. Frequently, it is about correcting the path of a relationship. Maybe this couple needs to surrender the remote and leave the TV and go off for an old-fashioned walk and talk with one another. Because, folks, it is our relationships with one another where the rubber meets the road. It is our relationships with one another that reveal our gaps between our walk with our talk if we are honest with ourselves. And one of the greatest values in small groups and in a spiritual community is that we can be with people when we rub up against them who will hold us themselves and ourselves accountable as well. And we get to see where our sharp edges injure and where our kindness and wisdom can prevail. Even sometimes, and particularly as leaders or parents or whatever, when we have to say and do things that others don't like or understand. Again, we get to see the gap between our walk and our talk. And what we say and do about those things reveals our spiritual and our emotional maturity. You know that story that Jesus and the disciples were walking on the Sabbath and they were hungry and they went into a field and began to gather grain so that they could make food to eat. And the Pharisees were very upset about this. It's an absolute prohibition to harvest on the Sabbath. And they said, you've defiled yourself by eating that grain. And what did Jesus say? It's not what goes into the mouth that defiles us. It's what comes out. Because what comes out reveals our consciousness. It reveals what we truly believe. It believes what we are believing in the depth of our being. That's why we say, pay attention to what you're saying. Pay attention to what you're thinking. Don't let yourself go to sleep. Each awareness is an opportunity to either affirm our freedom in spirit or perpetuate a limiting belief. So the other day, my friend, who I talk to almost every day, said on the phone, "Oh, I am so worried about this. I know I'm not going to sleep a wink tonight." You know what I said? Do you want to affirm that one more time? Have you ever said, "I just don't think I can get through this. I don't know how I'm going to make it through this"? Do you want to affirm that one more time? We're here because we want to grow spiritually, right? That's what we're here for. As long as we're on this planet, we know that we have more to learn. Remember, spiritual growth and maturity and emotional growth and maturity are the most important steps in our journey, and it is a continuous, lifelong journey. Enlightenment is not enough. An awakening and enlightenment experience is only the very first step of the journey. Unless we continue to be observers of our reactions and our conversations and our thoughts and our words, we betray that enlightening. In this wonderful book, I Have the Storm, Dr. Simmons teaches, first of all, that principle of oneness. There is nothing and no one against me. Oh. Let's affirm that together. There is nothing and no one against me. Whatever happens to me also happens for me. Say that the next time you're fired. Or someone says they want to divorce you. Whatever happens to me also happens for me if I am willing to see events in that light and use them for deeper, more accurate understanding of myself for another step in emotional and spiritual maturity. What happens to me also happens for me. Did I have you affirm that? Let's do that together. What happens to me also happens for me. In chapter 5 of the book, Gary defines the 4 conditions he calls the winds or condition that support the storm of conflict. They are separation, misperception, competition, and defensiveness. The question is, are we willing to look within for our own part rather than blame someone else? Again, Charles Fillmore wrote that honest self-observation is the prelude to Christ consciousness. To observe ourselves and notice what we're really seeing and what we're reacting to and what we're resistant to. Fillmore said, the immature person succumbs to ego inducements. Ego wants answers quickly, wants instant gratification. It wants things to remain status quo and wants things its way. Ego wants to be right at all cost. Ego seeks comfort rather than explore discomfort. And the next one is especially dangerous in churches, and I see it all the time. Ego will allow the least mature person in the group to set the agenda. Good people who, in a misguided desire to accept everyone, stands by and accepts bad behavior and lets it destroy a church. Yes, we accept everyone. We cannot accept bad behavior. Ego, because it cares mostly for status quo, sets no limits on those who lack self-regulation. What about the spiritually mature? The spiritually mature are willing to live in the question. We don't know. We're just walking through this. We're in this space. The spiritually mature are willing to remain flexible and willing to change. They are accountable to self and others and keeps the agreements that they've made and renegotiates the ones that they see that they cannot. They remain flexible and willing to change. They seek exploration. They're curious. They're open to information. They're willing to walk toward those things that they notice they are resistant to. And very importantly, the spiritually and emotionally mature are self-regulating, and they discern others who are self-regulating. There's a statement in Gary's book that I just love, that unless your parents were Mary and Joseph, you probably did not grow up knowing you were the Christ. We're all born into an imperfect caregiving environment, and we are all imperfect caregivers. That imperfection gives rise to our sense of incompleteness, and that fuels the winds of conflict. And I will tell you, I moved in with my daughter and granddaughter a year ago, and living with your adult child can really mirror your imperfect caregiving. And mine left a lot to be desired in those early years, particularly, I will tell you. And when I feel separate from my daughter or my granddaughter with whom I live, or my friends to whom I talk to almost every day, and especially my very precocious, really quite brilliant 15-year-old granddaughter, I would rather blame them for my upset than to be accountable. As one desiring spiritual maturity, however, it is up to me to notice what's arising to me. I don't know what their journey is. Their journey is their journey. This is my journey. And I have to notice my tendency to want to blame and want to fight. I have to spend time in prayer and reflect on what it is I really want, which is always an authentically restored relationship. It's always that. Well, I start by affirming our oneness. He or she is my brother and sister in Christ, and we are one. And when I get to the place where I can apologize for my misperceptions, my blaming, my unrealistic expectations, without qualifying or justifying or explaining or expecting anything else in return, I go and do it as quickly as I possibly can. And you know what? The other person usually does the same. Even my 15-year-old granddaughter has enough common sense and human contact when I apologize to her without saying, you know, when you did this, well, it made me, if I can just say, I realize I was this, I'm so sorry. She will say, well, I know I was short with you, Grandma, I'm sorry. She will. We have to stop seeing ourselves as children of God and be willing to step into growing up and to be men and women of God. Are you a grown-up? Are you an adult? Are you a woman of God? Are you a man of God? Let's affirm that together and just put the gender where you are. I am a woman of God. Again, I am a woman of God. Absolutely. When we perceive separation from ourselves and those who are important to us, we suffer needlessly. And that supports the winds of conflict as they stir within us. And then we see things not as they are, but as we are. Conflict, change, upset, ministerial transition in your congregation, they are the holy ground of our spiritual growth. And so we learn then in an ever more poignant and personal and permanent way that indeed we are one with God. We are the beloved, that wherever we are, God is, and all is well. And that includes me, and that includes you, and that includes my perceived enemy in that moment. I'm never separate from the wholeness of my being so that I can be who I came here to be. And one of the great things about this book is you get to identify who you came here to be. That is as the best expression of divine being that you can possibly be. The storm around me may well be the winds of conflict, but I'm learning every day to stand in that calm center. It doesn't mean that you might not get clobbered by a little bit of flying debris from time to time. But you can remain peaceful and centered in spite of what is happening around you. Nothing and no one is against me. I see things not as they are, but as I am. And the best news of all, we are not alone. It's not me that has to do all the work. This Holy Spirit in and through me does the work. I see you embracing this book and the principles in this book so you fully know into the very marrow of your being that this is so. Bless you as you make this journey.